They said Richard Hale vanished overnight. No calls, no messages, not even a resignation. One day he was the man everyone admired. The next, his office felt like a grave. I shouldn't have opened his computer, but something inside me whispered that I had to know why. The login screen didn't ask for a password. It asked for courage. Behind a folder named Personal, there was another, Vault. And inside Vault, another, Red Ledger. Files, hundreds of them, encrypted, disguised as old reports. Each one looked ordinary until I opened one labeled Project Dusk. Numbers, offshore accounts, code words like carbon mask and vortex. What did Richard discover that made him disappear? Why did his system go offline minutes after his last login? And if he wasn't the hero I thought he was, then who was he running from? A door creaked down the hall. I froze. For the first time, I realized someone else might be in the building. Richard always said, numbers don't lie, but people do. His office felt wrong. Too clean. Too perfect. Not a trace of the man who used to mentor me over late-night audits and burnt coffee. I found his personal notebook in a drawer, pages torn, half the ink smudged. A single phrase remained legible. If you're reading this, trust no one. The words didn't feel like a warning. They felt like a goodbye. Was he running from the company, or from what he became inside it? That evening, I went through Richard's old project archives. Every report from the sustainability division had identical data entries, too identical. Like someone had copy-pasted nature itself. Virion Capital didn't just finance green projects, it owned the numbers behind them. And if those numbers were lies, then our reputation, his legacy, was built on smoke. Maya Chen stopped by my cubicle that night. She noticed my expression before I even said a word. "Something's wrong, isn't it?" she asked. I nodded. She hesitated, then whispered, "You're looking into Richard's files, aren't you?" Her voice carried fear. And something else, knowledge. She knew more than she should. I realized then I wasn't the only one searching. At midnight, I returned one last time. Richard's office was locked, but the cleaning crew had left the security door ajar. I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cologne and dust. On the floor behind his filing cabinet, I found a USB drive. The label, Dusk Key. When I plugged it in, a single file appeared. A video thumbnail. Richard's face. He looked tired, older than I remembered. He pressed record, took a breath, and said, "If you're seeing this, Ethan, I have already found me." The video ended before I could process what I'd heard. Richard's voice trembled. Something I'd never seen in him before. He mentioned a project, something buried in the company's off-ledger accounts. Then the screen went black. Maya helped me decrypt the USB. Inside, we found a folder called The Vault. It wasn't financial data. It was evidence, files showing transfers to offshore entities that didn't exist. Each transaction matched one of Virion Capital's green investment projects. If this was true, the company wasn't saving the planet, it was selling its soul. Every password led to another layer, another deception. Shell companies in Cyprus, Cayman Islands, Zurich, all tied to Project Dusk. The money trail led right back to Richard. I wanted to believe he was innocent, that someone used his credentials, but the signatures were his. Why would he hide this from me? Why record that message instead of explaining everything? The deeper I looked, the more I realized Richard hadn't disappeared because of what he found. He disappeared because of what he did. Maya cross-checked Richard's login timestamps. He had accessed the internal ledger days before his disappearance, and minutes before the company's servers purged a terabyte of redundant file. She leaned closer, whispering. Someone inside covered his trail. I looked at her, and for a second I saw fear. Not for herself, for me. We printed the transfer logs. Every page felt heavier than the last. Each number was a nail sealing Richard's coffin, and maybe mine. The next morning, Virion Capital's internal portal was restricted. My access card no longer worked. When I called it, they said my credentials were under review. Someone knew. Someone inside the company knew I had Richard's files. As I stood outside the glass doors, security cameras tracked my every move. For the first time, I felt what Richard must have felt. Invisible, yet watched by everyone. That night, Maya came to my apartment. She didn't knock. She just entered, face pale, holding her laptop. "There's more," she said. "Richard didn't work alone." On her screen was an encrypted chat log. Usernames, timestamps, fragments of conversation. "Project Dusk is live. Funds moved to Zurich node." And one final line from Richard himself. "Erase everything. I'll take the blame." I stared at it for a long time. He wasn't just the man who vanished. He was the man who volunteered to disappear. I didn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment sounded like footsteps. Every car that slowed outside made my pulse jump. At dawn, my email was flooded. System alerts, account warnings, meeting cancellations. Then came the message. No subject, no sender. Just one line. "We know you have it. Leave it alone." I deleted it, but it didn't matter. My screen flickered. Webcam light turning on by itself. Someone was already inside my system. Maya insisted I come to her office. She said she could trace the IP behind the message. When I got there, she had 3 screens running. Data streams, trace maps, firewall logs. Each trace led back to the same source. Virion Capital headquarters. My stomach dropped. We went up against hackers or outsiders. The company itself was hunting us. When I returned home, my door was already open. Drawers pulled out. Papers scattered. My hard drive gone. Someone had been there, and they'd known exactly what to take. A voice message blinked on my phone. I pressed play. Richard's voice, calm, rehearsed. "Ethan, if they reached you, it's too late. Do not trust anyone at Virion." Static, then a click. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a countdown. I went to the police. I thought maybe this time truth would mean something. They listened politely until they saw where I worked. The officer closed his notepad, glanced at his supervisor, and said, "Well, look into it." He never asked for my name again. As I walked out, I noticed a man in a gray suit waiting by the exit. He smiled when our eyes met, not friendly. Familiar. Like he already knew everything about me. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going. Only that I had to move. As I zipped the bag, my phone buzzed again. "Maya." "They're deleting everything," she said. "Richard's files, your logs, my access history. All gone." "Then we leak it," I said. She hesitated. "Ethan, if we do that, we can't undo it." I looked out the window at the city. Lights flickering, rain still falling. "Neither could he," I said softly. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of the city. Flickering neon outside, no questions at the front desk. Just how I needed it. Maya joined me later, bringing her laptop and what little faith we had left. She'd recovered fragments from Richard's old cloud backups, video files, audio logs. We watched one together. Richard sat in his office speaking softly, like a confession. "I was part of it," he said, "but it went further than I ever imagined." I paused the video. My throat tightened. My mentor hadn't disappeared for uncovering corruption. He disappeared for betraying. The recording continued. Richard listed dates, payments, and names, half of them blurred out by static. He mentioned Project Dusk again, but this time he called it the correction. Maya leaned forward. "He wasn't trying to expose them," she murmured. "He was trying to fix it from inside." I replayed the line. Richard's tone wasn't heroic. It was regretful, For years, I'd idolized him as the man who fought the system, but now it sounded like he'd built it. Oh, another file unlocked, labeled Dusk Conversation on the. It wasn't a recording. It was a transcript. Executives debating whether to bury environmental losses by rerouting funds through ghost projects. And there it was, Richard's name, signing off approval. I wanted to stop reading, but I couldn't. Every word tore away the image of the man who once told me honesty was the only real currency. Maya tried to calm me down. He changed, Ethan. Maybe he tried to undo it. But how do you undo millions stolen in fake clean energy contracts? How do you erase greed that big? Then she found something else. A hidden audio clip buried in the data. Richard's voice again. If anyone finds this, I need you to finish what I couldn't. I tried to expose them, but I was already compromised. His tone broke on the word compromised. For the first time, I heard fear in a man who once sounded untouchable. That night, I stepped outside. The rain hadn't stopped in days. I looked at the city lights, knowing somewhere inside those towers were the people who made Richard disappear. Maya called from inside. What do we do now? I turned to her and said, we show the world who he really was. But as the words left my mouth, my phone buzzed. A text, unknown number. You're already too late. The street light above flickered and went dark. By morning, the story broke, but not ours. Headlines everywhere. Vyrian, analyst under investigation for data theft. My name, my photo, my face. They didn't accuse me of finding corruption. They accused me of creating. Within hours, my accounts froze. My ID was revoked, and every colleague I'd ever worked with stopped answering my calls. Richard's files weren't saving me. They were burying me. Maya slammed her laptop shut. They're framing you, she said. She'd traced the metadata in the leaked report. Someone had inserted Ethan's credentials into a falsified system log. They're rewriting the story before you can tell it, she whispered. And the worst part? It worked. Online, I was already a villain. Every truth I held now looked like a desperate lie. That night, Maya got an encrypted message from an unknown source. It contained one attachment, a folder titled Hail Truth. Inside were surveillance clips of Richard meeting Mark Devlin, the CFO. They weren't adversaries, they were partners. Devlin's voice was cold, calm, confident. If this goes public, we both fall. Richard's reply was barely audible. Then we fall together. He wasn't the martyr I thought he was. He was the architect of everything I was trying to stop. Oh, I reached out to a journalist, Lara Quinn. She'd written about Vire years ago, back when nobody listened. When I told her what we had, she paused and said, "You have no idea how deep this goes." We sent her part of the data, enough to prove Virion forged sustainability reports. She promised to verify it before publishing. For the first time, I thought maybe we still had a chance. But I should have known. The truth never travels faster than the lies that guard it. Hours later, a video link arrived, sent from an unknown address. I clicked it. Richard appeared on screen, older, unshaven, eyes hollow. "If you're watching this, Ethan," he said, "then they've turned on you too. But you need to understand. I wasn't trying to hide the truth. I was trying to survive it." He looked away from the camera, whispering, "Project Dusk was never about money. It was about control." The screen glitched, and his voice cut out mid-sentence. Maya turned to me, pale. "He's still alive." Lara published the first report at sunrise. By noon, the internet was on fire, headlines screaming, investors panicking, executives scrambling. The story exposed fake carbon credits, shell companies, and doctored environmental data worth billions. But Virion moved faster. They called it a smear campaign by disgruntled employees. They called me a criminal. The truth was finally out. And somehow, I was the villain in it. Within hours, corporate lawyers filled the airwaves. Every reporter who supported the leak was discredited. Every source connected to us vanished. Lara's newsroom received threats. Maya's online accounts were erased. They didn't just fight with lawyers. They fought with silence, the kind that kills careers. I thought exposure meant victory. But truth, I learned, doesn't shine. It burns. Maya found one last file buried deep in Richard's drive. Time-stamped after his supposed disappearance. It contained GPS coordinates and a note. If they find me, they find everything. Lara traced the coordinates. An abandoned data center outside the city. We drove there that night, headlights cutting through fog like knives. Somewhere inside that frozen place was Richard's last truth, and maybe the proof that he wasn't gone. The data center was half dead, servers humming like ghosts. We followed the cables to a locked terminal labeled Project Dusk Root Access. Lara connected her recorder, while Maya cracked the encryption. When the screen blinked alive, Richard's face appeared. Live feed, grainy, but real. "Ethan," he said softly. "You shouldn't have come." I froze. He was alive and watching us. Richard's voice cracked through the static. "I tried to stop them, Ethan, but once you build a lie this big, it doesn't die. It adapts," Maya whispered. "He's broadcasting through a hidden server." Lara asked, "Where are you, Richard?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "The files you have, they're only half the truth. The rest is inside Virian's mainframe. That's what they killed me for." Then the feed glitched, flickered, and vanished. Only one phrase remained on the screen. "If you see this, finish what I started." We drove back toward the city with the data Richard left behind, the last piece. Inside those drives were transaction keys, proof of fabricated carbon trades, and a list of executives involved. At the top was Mark Devlin. Lara said she could stream the files live during the shareholder meeting, Varian's biggest event of the year. Maya looked at me. "Once you go up there, there's no going back." I nodded. That's the point. The next morning, I walked into the Virian Capitol building like I still belonged there. Security barely glanced up. They thought the story was over. Maya fed me live access codes through an earpiece. Lara waited in a van outside with the broadcast ready. The shareholders gathered in the main hall, executives smiling, cameras flashing. When I took the stage, I felt a strange calm. They didn't know the system was already streaming their secrets to the world. Me, I plugged in the drive. The screens flickered, static cut through the speakers, and Richard's recordings filled the room. Board members froze as their own voices echoed, discussing bribes, hidden funds, fake audits. Mark Devlin stood up, shouting for security, but it was too late. Every screen in the room, and every phone watching the live stream, showed the truth. "Outside," Lara whispered through the feed. "It's out. The whole world's seeing it." The fallout was instant. Police flooded the building, journalists stormed the lobby, and executives were escorted out in handcuffs. But Richard's final files contained one last revelation: his own transactions. He hadn't just known about Project Dusk. He'd profited from it for years. Then, when guilt finally broke him, he tried to reverse it from within, and paid the price. I watched as his confession spread across the world. A hero turned culprit. A whistleblower turned sinner. And me, the last one left holding both halves of his truth. Weeks later, I sat by the river, watching the skyline shimmer in the dusk. Virian collapsed. Executives were charged. Investors fled. But no one asked about Richard Hale again. The world prefers simple stories, heroes and villains, clean endings. The truth doesn't fit that way. Maya joined me quietly. Do you ever think he planned it like this? She asked. I didn't answer. In my pocket, I still carried his final USB. Maybe it was redemption. Maybe it was another lie. Either way, it was all that was left of the man who taught me how to see numbers and how to see ghosts in them.